Hey guys, yeah, I just got off work about 10 minutes ago, but I wanted to come on here and talk about something that, is actually more of a question. Talk about or ask something that, is really intriguing. And I know it doesn't, suit the fancy of a lot of folks. It doesn't suit the fancy of a lot of folks. And what that is basically, when it comes to NFSW adult, very adult fan fiction based on the Sonic franchise, whether it's Satayam, just the games, X, IDW, Archie Comics, or an amalgamation of all, including Boom, and potentially what we're getting with Prime, but let's say an amalgamation of them all, or a merger of them all. Depending on what it's based on. We always seem to have a moment in there where I guess they're basically described as MILFs, M-I-L-Fs, MILFs. And it seems that anytime we have a MILF involved, it's always with somebody, of the established cast, or one of the established cast of the overall franchise combined. But, you wonder to yourself, well, who are the most commonly used? Well, the most commonly used MILF, if you will, in any of these situations is Vanilla Rabbit, Cream's mother. She's always the one used. It doesn't matter if it's an LGBTQ lesbian thing. It doesn't matter if it's a straight up thing. It doesn't matter if it's a bisexual thing. It doesn't matter if it's a trio, a les trois, as they call it, whatever it is called, the Ming trios, whatever it's called. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a two-way relationship, three-way relationship. It doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter. She is always the one that is looked at basically as the go-to MILF in these situations. However, she's not alone. Now there are countless MILFs, in the Sonic franchise that get called upon. Rosemary Prower, Tails' mom, from the Archie books. Bernadette Hedgehog, from the Archie books, who is Sonic's mom. I guess you could say Linda from the Echidna, from the Dark Legion of Echidnas. The list could go on. But there's one that surprisingly gets utilized more so than any of them. Someone that gets utilized just as much as Vanilla. And she too is from the Archie books. She, and I think you see the title down here below and it gives it away, she is Alicia Acorn, Queen Alicia Acorn, Sally's mom. A character that we did not get properly introduced to, until near the 100s. Yes, we saw her basically in cryogenic stasis, showing signs that she was coming back, showing signs that she was going to be revived again. And finally, in that one issue, she was, when she grasped King Acorn's hand, and at the time, he was revealed to be okay, but potentially paralyzed. That's when his wife came around. Now, with that said, Alicia made a lot of appearances. And I think the reason she was always called upon, or is always called upon currently, next to Vanilla, as the most requested MILF, if you will, from the Sonic overall franchise, to get intimate with certain characters, no matter who they are, is because of the fact that she strikes a very, very legit resemblance from head to toe to Sally. Now, of course, you might say, well, that's her mom. And that is true. It is her mom. But here's the thing. Some people will point out that her mom, of course, is a little taller. And some would even point out that, depending on who the artist is, that they add a few details here and there to the character. And be honest, if you look back at some of the issues she's in, they do exactly that. They do exactly that. But yeah, she, along with Vanilla, are the two most requested female characters of the MILF kind, if you will, to get called upon, into these situations. I mean, prime examples from what I've been told about, and heck, I'll be honest with you, I've even shared with you about here on YouTube and other places. Prime examples are, one prime example, I can't show it to you here, is PAL Comics. PAL Comics, which is PALCOMIX, has a Mobius Unleashed section dedicated to mostly adult XXX NFSW Sonic Web comics and stories, basically stories that are turned into web comics. And one of them is called A Helping Hand. And the premise of that story is that Alicia, is kind of in the mood, but Max is not. He's basically asleep. He is asleep, but she's in the mood. So she wanders the castle, and she bumps into Sally, who just is getting out of the shower. And they talk a little bit, bond a little bit, until Sally asks her mom to help dry her off. Basically, like, help dry her off in areas she can reach. It's then here where they sit down on the bed, and Alicia asks Sally a very personal question about how many times Sonic's you-know-what has been in Sally's you-know-what. And Sally basically says, I don't know, a couple of times and all that. Why? And Alicia tries to play it off like, oh, I'm just curious, just wondering. But then Sally gets this sly look on her face because she starts realizing, oh, I see what's going on, Mom. She doesn't say it out loud, but she kind of lets her actions speak louder than her words were. Her words would, I should say. She lets her actions speak a lot louder than her words because she sees what's going on. She sees that her mom's in the mood. So she, gives her what she wants. She gives her a very pleasurable time. She does the very usual LGBTQ lesbian acts, if you will. Encourages her mom, who accepts the encouragement to return the favor. They just go all out, and yes, they do kiss each other, French kiss, tongue wrestling kind of deal, if you will. And yeah, that's just how most of the comic goes until the end, where Max does wake up and sees what's going on, and then, well, you can kind of assume what happens from there. Anyway, but I'll tell you honestly though, when the people described me and even shared the comic with me, of how it began, how it went and how it ended, to be honest with you, if I was the writer and I was the artist, I would have not added Max's inclusion at the end. I would have left it out and put and I would have had them kissing still, or I would have had them kiss again, laying on the bed, and then that's it. and maybe with a caption saying, is this the start of a new romantic relationship or something. I would have not added Max into the inclusion of the ending, you know, if I was the writer or the artist. But yeah, that's one example. That's one prime example. Another example, believe it or not, is, like I said, a story I shared with you and I talked to you about here on YouTube called Queen's Delight. This was a story by Blue Quill 68, I think. I think that's their name, on fanfiction.net. And basically it involved Alicia having a very intimate moment with Alina, Queen Alina from Sonic Underground. And the way the story is told is Alina is indicated to be from an alternate world, very similar to the Prime world, and that basically Sonic is willing to accept her as his mother because that's who she is in the other world, because I guess he comes face to face with his other self. Whatever. Anyway, to get to the point, Alina obviously is taking a shine to Alicia when they all first meet. And what she does later on is she kind of gives Alicia the time of her life. She gives her a very memorable night. You could check this out in the video if you want to. I put the script there, the story there, so you guys can read it. But she gives her a very memorable night, intimate night, to the point that basically it's indicated that these two are now girlfriends. They're now lovers. They're now in a relationship together, despite the fact that Alicia is still married to Max. But I think it's hinted at that maybe in this story's universe, that relationship, that marriage may come soon to an end, because Max is still described as he was before the reboot in 252 as being very cranky, old school, very like, you know, not very, just basically a jerk. Basically a jerk, if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, that's another example. Another one, believe it or not, another one that was done is called, trying to think, Sweet Royal Love. Now originally it was called something else. It was based on something else, and I have both versions. The other one is a little bit more, I guess you could say, hardcore, because you have the characters, at least Sally's character, acknowledging Guns N' Roses, Black Sabbath, and all that. So yeah, you can tell that the person is a very metal individual who wrote this. But anyway, I think it might have been one of the fan fiction writers that comes and goes whenever the opportunity arises to post a story. And they extended this story. They actually went into several chapters with it. But the primary relationship is Sally and her mom. Basically, just like Helping Hand, Sally kind of helps her mom out, and basically one thing leads to another, and they end up finding out that, you know, maybe that the one person they always wanted to be with and needed to be with for the rest of their life is each other. As insensual as that may sound, that's exactly the premise. But what's interesting, though, is the fact that they're not afraid to share the love with anybody else who's cool with it. For example, they share the love immediately with the likes of Nicole. That's right, Nicole gets involved. And sorry if my chin hit the mic there, I was looking at something. But yeah, Nicole gets involved because she's also another lover of Sally. So Sally has two lovers, Nicole being one of them, and her mom being the other. But then it's not just Sally and her mom and Nicole. It's also Rosie the nanny. That's right, Rosie the nanny gets involved, and it just goes from there. They involve Rosemary, they involve Elias, they involve Amadeus, you know, both Rosemary and Amadeus being, the parents of Tails. They involve Tails, believe it or not. They just involve whoever they feel is going to be comfortable with the relationship, and then that's it. So, Sweet Royal Love's another example. A Mother in Need is another example, but this is an example of where somebody invites Alicia to be part of it. For example, in this story's universe, Tails is the one dating Sally, and basically Sally sees that her mother is in need of love. Basically, her mother needs to be loved, because her father, just like in other stories, is not giving it to her because he's a jerk. So they take the opportunity of the fact that, okay, wait a minute, Max is going to be gone on a world tour for a couple of days, or diplomatic world tour for a couple of days. I should let my mom take advantage of this and share my boyfriend with her. And that's what happens. And at first, Alicia in this story is a little, a little unsure about it, until Sally basically says it's cool, it's fine, Tails will be all right with it. And eventually Tails, he's of course a little reluctant at first too, but then he kind of is like, okay, I understand, I get it, I will do this, and that's it. And they do the deed. They get into the moment. It's a three-way between the two. You even have, during the moment, Sally and her mom kissing each other, which, Tails is surprised by and everything, because they're basically cleaning each other's faces off of certain covering, I'll put it that way. And as they're getting in the moment, they basically stop, I guess, as it's described, as they're getting in the moment, and they just go into a deep kiss with each other, basically showing that that even with Tails not around, they can have a lesbian relationship, if you will. So there's that example. Another example is, I think, and again, I do apologize for my chin hitting the mic. Another example, I think, is the Wives of Mobius story. I think it's the Wives of Mobius. And long story short, Alicia knows about the relationship between Tails and Sally, because they're again hooked up in this one. And so she basically gives Tails an ultimatum. Either give her the pleasure he's given Sally, or she'll let Max see the video of Sally and Tails getting it on in the royal chambers. So yeah, that's another example where she gets called upon to get, some action. Another one, I'm trying to think. Another one is something about, it's another one by Blue Quill 68. It's about something like Passion on the Throne or something like that, where Sally, Alicia, and her mom, get it on with Sonic in this case. And again, just like with the Mother in Need story, you have both Sally and Alicia kissing each other and all that. There's that moment. But the bonus, from what I understand, the bonus of that story that wasn't in the other one is when Sonic's doing the deed with both of them, he takes it to a way another level, and let's just say the end result will be revealed 9 months later. Yeah, that's how far they went with that one. And then there's another one, I think, where they kind of do it at poolside or something like that. It's just an interesting scenario in all of these stories that I've described, including some that are on the horizon. Yeah, Cyberfox is, and I'm sure others are basically in the works of, or in the progress, in the work, if you will, of bringing some other stories to life. For example, there's one called A Queen's Relief, where Max goes out of town and Alicia, needs some relief, And what happens is she calls upon Tails to fix a leaky faucet, but also takes advantage of the opportunity to get intimate. Then the other one is Who's Your Queen, where she finds out about Tails having a relationship with Sally, and I guess is okay with it, but wants to show Tails, hey, you know, she may be the princess, but I'm your queen, if you catch my drift. So there's that example. There's that example of upcoming stories. But like I said, there are webcomics too. Like I said, A Helping Hand is one of them. There is one where basically she gets it on with her son in an insensual way that ends up with her basically getting ready to, you know, pop within 9 months. There's another where she basically acts like I'll just say it bluntly, a whore. And she decides, you know, because the story takes place when Sonic and Sally obviously are not in good terms and everything. Alicia still wants to be friendly with Sonic and his family, but also sees, you know, Max doesn't give me, you know, give me pleasure or anything, and I want to give and I want that pleasure. Sonic and Sally are kind of like on the rocks right now. And that's when she comes up with the devious idea of, I'm going to get this guy to, you know, get with me, and that's that. Period. And that's what happens. That's what happens. So, yeah, there's a lot of good examples. Another one, like I mentioned earlier, I hinted at earlier, is called Miles and the MILFs. And although it's only in 2 chapters right now, the next chapter would involve Alicia. Because in the first chapter, it's revealed that because Jules is still robotic but has free will, he can't give Bernadette the pleasure she needs. And she's going through a certain mood at the moment, the same kind of mood that Vanilla's going through. So both of them in both chapters end up getting in on the action with Tails, if you catch my drift. And the difference though is Bernadette and Jules are prepared for this because they've planted the seeds, if you will, to potentially have another child long ago. Well, Vanilla basically, you know, tells Tails, hey, when you want to basically you know, not go all the way, but you're about to release, let me know. And when he tries to let her know during their moment, you know, she doesn't get up. She doesn't, you know, acknowledge what he's saying or what she told him to say, and he basically ends up doing the deed and potentially, you know, giving her, his offspring, if you get my drift. And this is all because he's encouraged by Jules to do it, because Jules is a robot and he can't, you know, give that pleasure anymore. And because of Cream, because in this story Cream's father has passed away, Vanilla's husband, and Vanilla hasn't had that pleasure in a while. And when the 3rd chapter comes around, it's hinted at that Max is going through a similar situation with Alicia. And just like Jules, because he's in a certain predicament, in other words, wheelchair bound, disabled if you will, he can't give Alicia what she wants. So Jules, who arrives at the castle to visit, to check up on the king, basically suggests, you know, an idea for that solution, and obviously that idea, you know, involves Tails. You know, it involves Tails getting it on with the king's wife. So yeah, again, that potential 3rd part, whenever it happens, is another example. You know, that story, Miles and the MILF, is another example, basically, of of Alicia being called upon. Yeah. I mean, again, everything I've used here as an example, or I've mentioned, from the PAL Comics Helping Hand Mobius Unleashed comic or webcomic, to all the stories you can find at fanfiction.net and elsewhere. These are just prime examples of the fact that You know, if you were to do a ranking of the top 5, if not the top 4 MILFs in the Sonic franchise, Vanilla and Alicia would be at the top at 1 and 2, if not tied at the top at number 1, because they're the most utilized. And that's a fact. Everybody else would be behind them. You know, everybody else would be behind them, and you know, people, if they were to look at a list like that and wonder why, you know, Alicia is ranked at number 2 or tied at number 1, you know, with Vanilla, or let's say you're doing a tier list, right? You're doing a tier list, and they see in the S level, which is supposed to be super, the superior level, Alicia and Vanilla are at number 1, or basically in that category. People who don't know about, you know, some of the stories that I just mentioned would wonder why. Why is Alicia in that category? And then when somebody would explain to them, yeah, you could just imagine the reaction of like, oh, okay, we get it. But again, like I said, these are just prime examples. These are just prime examples of stories people have told me about, people have asked me to read and look at. You know, it's just a prime example of the fact that Vanilla in the overall Sonic franchise is not the only most requested MILF to be utilized in adult erotic NFSW Sonic stories. Because, believe it or not, Alicia Acorn, Queen Alicia Acorn, Sally's mom from the Archie books, is also one of the most requested. And that is a fact. That is a fact. And I know people might say, well, you're kind of wrong about it. Well, let me ask you this, guys, in response. Let me ask you this in response. If I'm wrong, look at the stories I came up with, or I just mentioned. Look at those stories. Tell me right to my face right now. Okay, don't tell me to my face right now, but figuratively, tell me to my face right now. You look at those stories that I just mentioned. You go to fanfiction.net, you go to Webcomics, you look at all that, and you compare it to, you know, the stories Vanilla's in. And let me ask you, you know, you compare Alicia's appearances, the Vanilla's appearances, and then the other appearances by the other characters. And let me ask you this. Who out of the 4 or 5 MILFs that you could find, that you can list, who out of them have the most appearances? Who are used the most? And I guarantee you, if your answer is Vanilla and Alicia, then you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, as crazy as this audio video may sound to a lot of people, and as weird and as unusual, I should say, as it may sound, you know, it's the truth. It is a factual truth that basically, Alicia Acorn, outside of Vanilla, is the next most requested MILF to be used in adult Sonic media. Very adult NFSW Sonic media. And that is a fact. That is a fact. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I know this may have sounded strange to a lot of you. Of course, I am doing this while I wait for my bus. It has cooled down just a bit today, not too much, but just a bit. I'm assuming. Like I said, I'm waiting for my bus to arrive very soon, as I also check the temperature. But yeah, you know, it even surprises me now that I think about it, or when I thought about doing this video, it even surprised me. Because, again, all these stories, when you compare Bernadette and Rosemary from other stories that people may had me read or shared with me, again, it's just mind-boggling that Alicia, who was introduced in the books, didn't really start having a role until post 100 issues, if you will, if not before that, is the second most requested, if not the next most requested MILF and for to be used in adult NFSW sonic media. It's really surprising. It really is. But again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I know this may sound strange to a lot of people. This probably went on a lot longer than it should have. But I just had to get this off my chest, guys, because honestly, this is just, a moment that, well, not a moment, but, just, a situation. Just a situation that I think, would catch anybody off guard. It would catch anybody off guard. So yeah, I just wanted to come on here and, give you my thoughts on it. I want to know what your thoughts are and everything. Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you on the situation. Super thanks will be enabled afterwards. And if you want to donate, if not already have donated in this premiere or future premieres,